Brother Paul, would you open with a word of prayer? Is he?
Yes, yes, sir. Dear Heavenly Father, please, dear Heavenly Father, please bless us today as we study your word, Lord, and try to bring those to you, Lord, and have a better understanding of doing your will, Lord, and not our will, Lord. And we know that can only be done through faith, Lord. And please, again, bless all those who are needy today, that are suffering, that need you, Lord. Call them to you, Lord. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Paul. All right. I have been assigned the pretty much the first half of Hebrews 11, and this has got to be one of the most well-known chapters to me in these latter writings, the smaller letters that written of the lives of these people. There's no other place in the Bible where we have everything we learn through the Old Testament lined up, their lives one right after another as documentation of God working in their lives. Many of us often quote about the faith chapter, and we hope one day to be accounted with them when we meet them all in the kingdom. And sometimes we know the story of their lives. Many of their lives were tumultuous, even violent, frightening. Many times their lives hung in the balances. We saw their weaknesses and things like that. And when I first took this on, I was wondering, okay, it's so easy just to read through each verse. Yes, we know what he did and things like that. He was very faithful, but I had some things opened up to me of how to look at it, maybe just with a little different light, but with the same light. And what I came up with was God's perception of people from the beginning to the end of their life. We often see things only in the moment, and sometimes we don't forget that God sees from the beginning to the end, even from the day we're born. So this is about how God sees people from the beginning to the end before they even know their own capabilities and their weaknesses. And as we can see that, here's what I've learned in more depth than just the phrase of saying it, is that God judges them righteous, even though they will have many failings along their path. And why? Because he sees the beginning from the end. Another thing that it's also about people who, through the eyes of faith, as Brother Kyle used that phrase last week, conquered many challenges that God would required of them to travel through to bring out those strengths. This is when they just keep stumbling into some situation, and then God rescues them from it. They weren't random. They were all part of the journey laid out by the Lord from the beginning. And if we understand that and grasp that and trust it, then we know that wherever you are right now, whether it's good or bad, it's where God took you and how you react to it and what you learn from it. They were all taken on journeys that was going to require faith. If faith is not required of us, it's really hard to understand the value of it and the depth of it. Where if we just, if our life is just a piece of cake the whole way, we don't understand the struggles of others. And many times we don't understand until we make the same fall ourselves or something even worse. Then we start to show a little more grace. And that's something I want to gain from this. It's not just reading an historical accounts, and it's like a history book, like reading about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all their struggles and bringing the country together, but we don't connect with it. It's just history. And this can't be just history. And we're going to, which I know many of you already understand that, but maybe we'll look at it in a depth that might put a little different twist that's valuable. Just as an introduction to this class, this whole class, which I found the more I got into it, the more I really opened my eyes to some things and what I've been through in my own life. We see people in our own lives who seem very righteous. All of us see people, we just think they're almost flawless. I wish I could live my life like them. Then we see that at some point in their life, they behave very badly, at least in our opinion. That we find them, what on earth are you doing? What were you thinking? How did you allow that into your life? Why are you with this person? There's so many possibilities there. And I fall into all these categories of thinking this way in the moment. Keep in mind, if God is working, it's in their lifetime that he's looking at it, the whole thing. When we see people fall like that, we start to question their faith, their belief, and make judgment calls about them that are not favorable. I'm very guilty of this, of somebody who I thought highly loved, and then we find out they're very much called into question at some point in their life. And especially early in my spiritual career, I have to admit that sometimes I wrote them off. I could say, well, they're not going to be in the kingdom, or they're lost. I use the phrase in my own mind, they're lost. And, you know, who am I at 20, 25 years old to determine that a person is lost because they're behaving badly? Of course, as we get older and wiser, and we kind of realize after a while, am I any better? And really, that's not a failure on their part. It's a failure on their part to even have that train of thought. And it's something I grew through my years. I don't think that now. Now I've seen the long-term effects of people from at least in the 60-some years that I've been around. I've had a little more time to see, okay, this is just part of the journey. It's not the journey. It's not the finish. We know that in our own lives, we often fall into very many similar situations, whether in our mind or whether physically or whatever. And we would not want, this is something I got from this, is very important to me anyway. We would not want our legacy to our brothers and sisters, our children, our grandchildren, and anyone who we know to be identified by that would be our legacy, is because we fell so badly in some short period of our life. And even if it's a 10-year period or stretch that you're in this situation, would you want to be somebody to judge you as that is your legacy? I have to bet, no, I wouldn't. But I have been guilty of doing that. And that's something that this chapter and this study has helped me define better. And hopefully it'll help y'all too, if you hadn't thought about it in that way. Again, our failings are not always faith problems. This is the little nuances all through this. When we fall, did we fall because we had no faith? Or did we fall just because we are fleshly creatures? There is a difference. At least I have to say for myself. When you fall, or when I say fall, I mean when you commit a sin, or you get caught up into something that maybe you shouldn't have, or you were in the wrong place that you knew better. Was your faith any less? Or were you just allowing your flesh to get the better hand? As I look back, again, this whole thing, we all have to look at this, not as how other people are behaving, but how are you taking all of this in? Why are these people all mentioned? And I have to look back on my own life. There's many times that I've fallen, and I can't say that it was a lack of faith, that I don't believe God's going to do this, or I don't believe God's going to do that, so I'm going to go do this. That was never in my life. Now, maybe some of y'all had moments like that. That's between you and the Lord. But even in my worst failings, I can't say that my faith was called into question so much as my flesh was called into question. And that helps a little bit. In some ways, it's comfort. It's not like that I love God any less in that moment. But he used that moment to remind me of what I was. So that's another thing that hopefully you'll take away from this. If anybody wants to cut in here and throw something out, please feel free to. Again, this is my introduction into the class of the direction I hope to take it. And hopefully it'll have a nice, some kind of little extra to it than just reading the historical accounts of these old people from old. I hope we can see also that as we look at the lives of these men and women of the past that were written for us, see that our journeys in this study are not to think of these people's capabilities beyond ours. A lot of times we can look at people like super saints or super apostles or something like that, where these are all people who achieve faith way beyond anything I would ever do, and is bar put out of our reach of what these people went through and what they endured and what they accomplished. And no, they haven't. None of these things are out of our reach of our capabilities. God knows what you can do, and he won't put you through more you can bear. But never look at the list of these people as, well, they were way beyond what I could ever do. No, we're all in this together and in these journeys together. And I want to be counted with them, not beneath them, or not capable of being with them. They all fell just like we did. These are not people who were exceptions to the rule. They are examples for our learning. And just well-known verse would be the first verse we read here. It's not in Hebrews, but Romans 15:4. Debbie, you're first on my list. Can you read that? You still muted.
Sorry, give me that reference again.
Romans 15:4.
Okay. For whatever things were written before were written for our learning, that we through the patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
Okay. Very simple statement to understand there. I use it all the time. It's been very valuable to me. They were written for our learning. And they were not written to show what we can't do, or you'll never achieve this. They were written to show what we can do through faith. And that should be extremely powerful, that when we read about these people who endured the things they did, that God can give you the same strength if it was brought upon you. They're not people or situations that are beyond anything I could ever endure. I don't know what I can endure. You always like to think, well, I could never endure that. I don't know what I can endure until I'm put through it, because if you're in it, your whole world has changed, and your whole way of thinking and everything in your mindset is rechanneled from where you are when you're sitting comfortably on your sofa. Because a lot of things kick in, a lot of things that you've learned, a lot of things you've seen through others and those who help you, take you to another level and place. So anybody got anything they want to add before we move on? I don't want to just keep talking. It's just sort of, like I say, an introduction to where I'm going to try and take the class. Okay. All right. So the first three verses in Hebrews 11 are an explanation of what faith is and what it looks like through life, through the lives of these people, what it can look like under severe conditions, what it can look like through love and death and fear and all kinds of things that were upon people. Of course, it's not exhaustive of the things that can be brought on us in life, but if we it does cover a lot of things that can be applied to anything that we're going through. So the first 3 verses, and I don't even know if we'll get beyond those today, are going to explain what faith is. And I really want to look at this close. We all think, we say we know what faith is. Oh, it's belief in God. Oh, I believe God will do this, I'll do that. But it's very much should be a part of the intricate webbing of our spirit, not just a phrase, not just a spiritual platitude. It should be just a whole dynamic of thinking on a daily basis. And that's what these people are recorded and how they did in their lives. So let's take the first verse. Kathy, you're next in line there. Just Hebrews 11:1, very well-known verse. Kathy? Oh,
okay, I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
You just want me to read verse 1?
Just 1.
Okay. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen.
All right. The King James put it, as we know very well, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But from, like with Kathy's version, I think that word assurance, it describes it better. For a long time, I struggled with the word substance, because when you think about substance, you think about something that you can put your hands on. That's maybe let's say concrete. We think very much in the physical world that we're going through, but there's substance that doesn't have matter attached to it. But what it does have is what's going on in the world around you so much. And it is the evidence of things that we cannot see. And in a court of law today, that wouldn't hold up with anything, would it? Everything has to be physical. It has to be seen. It has to be recorded. It has to be absolute for it to work. But we have things that we cannot see that are absolute to us, and the world is oblivious to it in many ways, which we know so well. Is something that substance or that assurance, this is the way I put it, is something that you have seen, heard, or experienced that makes you believe that no matter how dire things look or how impossible to the human understanding of the world around them, it will happen, or it has happened, whatever. You think about that. Does that sort of say it the same as other people would understand it? I mean, this is just the way I put it. How would any of you want to say how you would explain it?
I would use the word trust more, because if you have faith, I think it's just better that, it says the assurance of things, hoped for. So to me, that means, you really trust it's going to be assured, I just think that's the word I always put with it. Yeah, complete trust.
Mm-hmm. Regardless of how little the world could ever see it around you, that you have that. Everybody has a little bit different, maybe spin on what it means to them based on what they've experienced. Because all of us have had our trust built up by things that others have no idea of what we've experienced. And sometimes you even try to tell somebody, this is what happened. And they'll say, well, it's just a coincidence that it happened at that time. Or, well, yeah, maybe. But to you, it is so concrete that is a situation that God used. All right, I'm just going to throw this out there. What would be some examples of that assurance?
things that have happened before. I'm not a Greek scholar, but when you look at hypostasis, which is where it comes from, it's a compound of two things. And the one is like the setting under, or a foundation, a support, and then the assurance. So if we think of the situations that have happened before in our life, things that we believe, and things that happen to us that we are strengthened by, I think those become the support for the next things, like things that we're not so sure, we can't see the end to. But if we look back at the supports or the foundational situations or events that happened, those build faith and assurance in believing that the next things that we can't see the end of can happen. We can trust, as someone just said.
Yeah, that's good, Martha. I think a lot of us would have our own little words to use to explain it in our own life, but these are some very basic explanations, because every one of us here have things that no one else in our lives has seen or experienced except us, and it's personal between us and God. And that's what I've learned again through my life, that this is where he touches us all as individual children, not also as a collective, as the brotherhood, but individually. He works with each one of us based on how we would receive that information. What I would go through and say, God did that, and not one of you might say, no, that was just, it just happened that way, And that can be a little frustrating, because I've been in those conversations. And so then it comes to times I don't even try to explain it, because that was only I can know that. Now, I don't want everybody to open all their past to everyone else, but if there's anything that someone's comfortable with, that any of you have an experience that assurance, you saw that assurance in your life. Think about personally, not just from the scriptures and thus saith the Lord so much, but something that happened that was convincing to you that God was and Jesus were working directly in your life individually. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not comfortable with that, it's all right. I'm going to give one little example here for me, but I know you have to think about it for a minute, what you want to open up to. But I do want this to be something where we grow from it and examine ourselves. Okay, well, let me see. I have, well, one of the things we all see today on a larger scale is, of course, Israel. Israel is God's witness that things are true. And that's to the collective of us all. We all see what's happening in Israel, and we all are sitting on the edge of their seats every time something's going on. Like when, Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, that was big. We were all talking about it. It's another little piece of the pie, or the puzzle has come together that the world has no idea. America didn't look at it. Well, Donald Trump has fulfilled prophecy. No, Donald Trump just moved, he's an ally of Israel, and he had the nerve to get it done and didn't worry about a war happening. I'm not taking political sides on anything. I'm just saying that he did it, and you and I all together collectively felt something about that situation that the world would totally miss. The millions of people who voted these men into power had no knowledge of what was really taking place. So these are the things on a collective that the assurance of things, or the substance, that one situation there would definitely come under the title of substance of things hoped for, because we know that has to happen for these nations and all to react to it. And look at the way things have been happening over there since. It's been accelerating in some ways.
Roger, I've had some small things happen. Well, to me, they're small, but it might seem small to other people, but they're big to me. And
that's what we're talking about.
One was when I decided to come back to the truth. Remember, we were living in Texas, and when Rob was up for orders, and it was between I think it was Florida and Norfolk, and I so desperately wanted to be Norfolk, so I prayed as hard as I could and got that, and we got Norfolk because God knew I wanted to come back home to him and to you all. And so that to me, was a move in the right direction. And then the other one was when Rob got to get the job he got now, because I didn't want to move from here. I wanted to stay here and everything. So little things like that, that might seem like, coincidence to other people. To me, it was me, God answering my prayer and convincing me and having that faith that he would answer me. And those two, meant a lot to me. So that's just a couple of things. There's other little things, but just those two were the main ones that I had in my life.
Well, thank you sharing that, Kath. Yeah, that's the kind of things that I'm talking about, that only you would appreciate the value of that, because he could have ended up anywhere in this country. And you could have been in isolation. He could have put you in, in some very remote place where Christadelphians were hundreds of miles away. But he brought you back, and you knew your children, and you were able to, you're sitting here with us today because of that. And we all see the value in it, but to you, it would be the assurance of or the substance of things hoped for. That's just one. Did anybody else have something? Now that Kathy's cracked open the fear factor. So.
Well, I don't really like to speak up, but I think it's really bad if we don't share the things when we've seen God work in our lives. See, I get all emotional. That's why I try to be quiet. But David and I were living in South Louisiana in this tiny little ecclesia. And Jan was the only little kid, really. And we really wanted to get her in an ecclesia. So we prayed and prayed about where could we go. Well, we had options, We thought, we could go move here. We could move there. They have a great ecclesia. But we really prayed about it. And I mean, things just unfolded for us. You cannot deny the hand of God was in it. God provided David a job with Walmart as a pharmacist in Virginia. They were just opening up around here. Walmart paid all of our moving expenses. And God is in this huge ecclesia with all these kids. And it would be ridiculous for not to admit that and share that. I think that really helps each other build us up in our faith when we see the hand of God working in our life. And we know that God orchestrated all of that for us. And we are still grateful for that opportunity to come up here and be with all these brethren. And I'm sorry I get so emotional, but that's me. So anyway, thank you, Roger. I think it's really important to share those stories.
Yeah. That's what I got out of this is we can read about the lives of these men, but we're not connected to them except on a religious sort of historical level and a hope of meeting them in the future. But it's not the same as when we experience it. The situation I had, and I've mentioned it before from the stand, so some of you might remember it, but it was at a time where financially here, things were extremely tight. And you've all heard the phrase, the check is in the mail, which means it's coming. Yeah, when you tell somebody the check's in the mail, they say, yeah, right, I'll get it, 10 years from now, maybe. But anyway, make a long story longer, so to speak. Both my boys, when they were like 13, 14, they both needed braces at the same time. They had horrible teeth. I mean, it was one of those things, if you don't get them braces, they're going to have a lot of problems, emotionally and, not wanting to, Jordan, he didn't even want to smile at times because his teeth were so bad. They both inherited my teeth because I had really bad teeth when I was young also. But I said, I can't not let them get their braces. I mean, I just knew the long-term effect. If I don't do this now, they're going to suffer emotionally down the road. So anyway, I went ahead and got them, not really knowing how I was going to pay for them. And I think I'd already made the first payment on them. I went through it, and I went out to the mailbox one day, and there was a check in the mail. I'm with you, David. I get real emotional, but for $2,200. Anyway, I was hoping I'd get through it without the
You're
emotion.
just getting emotional to make me feel better, right?
And yeah. Anyway, now you're probably thinking, well, a brother and sister must have known about your plight or something like that and wanted to help out. It was from a homeowner's policy that I had overpaid on 10 to 15 years earlier. And I didn't even remember the company.
Oh my God.
That check.
Praise God.
That check showed up 10 years to 15 years on the day I needed it. That told me that God is already preparing the way to take care of you at the time you need it. But you also have to go through it. And that single moment told me that I'm not just in a situation and then the Lord rescues me. He had prepared that, I believe, and I was absolutely convinced that that was to increase my faith that I'm going to take care of you. It's going to be tough. Sometimes you don't know where it's going to come from one day from the next, but he had already prepared something for me 10 to 15 years in advance. And now we always hear the phrase, the check's in the mail is a bad thing. It's like, yeah, it's never going to come, because people tell us, yeah, I put the check in the mail 2 days ago. You didn't get it? No, I did not. But in this situation, the checks in the mail was one of the most strengthening and instructive moments at a difficult time. So I always like to hear that phrase, the check's in the mail. I said, well, that's a good thing to me. So anyway.
It's like God provided for you at the exact moment you needed it.
Yeah, but he had already been, you think about, I had been overpaying on this policy for years and never knew it. And God was simply just building up to pay for my children's teeth. I wrote one of them off completely, and the other had paid for a lot of the other one. I mean, just like that, it was gone. And so the Lord was building up a little savings account for me, and through fraudulent activities of this company all along. So it was a wonderful experience, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. What I'm trying to say is this was one of those moments where I can connect with these people that we're going to read about when they were in dire situations, and God had already prepared the way long before they got there. And he knew that they would use it properly, but they had to learn it. They had to go through the experience in order to understand what God was doing. Otherwise, they would think I figured it out myself, but because so it's just things like that. And I'm glad to share it with you, and I'm glad you two sisters shared your moments with you. Is anybody else like to share something? We don't have to spend the whole class on this, but I'm going to take this class as it unfolds, because when it comes to our faith, it should be emotional experience. It should never be an academic thing. My faith is not academic. I learned it through this, but my faith is an emotional experience to me. It should be that to all of us. And I'm sure we all have things that it might not need to be discussed, but there's anything you want to share that actually helps strengthen us all, feel free to at any time through this class as we go.
Well, I think that's every time something like that happens in our lives, you know, individually, I think that should make our faith grow even more, because even in little things, you know, that to the world to each other might think like something like little, but it might be a huge thing for you. And like with financial stuff, like here, like, oh, how am I going to pay for this? And God always works it out. And I finagle things around and I can pay it, or we get unexpected money that, like, where'd this come from? Like, you know, like a utility bill going down or something, anything that can, you know, help you. Oh, see, God provided, you know. And so so anytime a situation like that comes up, I trust God's going to work things out and help me figure things out, how we, you know, can pay something, you know. So, and that little thing strengthens my faith even more in him. So.
Right. And when we share our stories with each other, we see that, okay, I'm not just making this up in my own mind. Other people have their own struggles, that they get it. They understand that this is something unique to their life alone. We don't all go through the same thing. It's unique to each one of us of what God is doing. And again, as we sit here together, we're collectively talking about these things, but each one of our relationships is unique to God separately, because you're his child. It's just like if you had 8, 10, 12 children, you would have a unique relationship with each one and have to maybe correct them differently and things like that. We have a saying in my working world, there are people who, you know, when you have a problem employee or somebody who needs to learn something, there are those who you poke, there are those who need to be stroked, and then there are those who just need a kick in the rear, you know. And we had people, I learned all those type of people. There's some you just poke them along, they'll get it. There's others you got to stroke them. They like to be, you know, talked to calmly and things like that. And then there's other where we're just going to have to get this straightened out, you know. And that's the way we are with our different children and all. You raise them all uniquely compared to how they process the information, with the idea of getting to them to the end. Okay, we only have about 4 minutes left. So if anybody wants to share something else, please jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to go just a little bit farther here. So anyway, sort of
Roger?
like, yes, Irma.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I'm sure you know that I feel like our life is just full of instances where the Lord has shown me, you know, that my faith and trust in him, you know, is always right there, you know, to help me. And, you know, a couple of the little things that you know, I want to share is, you know, the place where I work. You know, I see customers, you know, on a daily basis. And, you know, there are some days when, because of my health, you know, sometimes I feel so bad, I don't want to go to work. I can't go to work, but I push myself to go. And I have found that on some of those days when I just say, no, I got to go, I got to get up and go, you know, I find when I get to work, you know, a customer, you know, throughout the day might come in and start telling me that my customers know they can talk to me because I'm always talking to them, you know, spiritually, you know, about God, or, you know, praising the Lord, praising Jesus. And so they know they can talk to me, and I'll have a customer that will come in and say, you know, give me his testimony or her testimony, and about how they need prayer, you know, for me to pray for them. And I just, you know, after they leave, I take a moment just to, you know, to talk to the Lord and say, you know, thank you for doing, you know, for, you know, helping me, you know, push me to get to work, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten to hear this person's, you know, need for prayer. You know, I'm a firm believer in prayer. I mean, I know we all are. And so, you know, I just think that the more people that are praying with you, the more power it is. So, you know, I just feel like I enjoy praying for them. You know, I want them to know that there's one more person out there that, you know, will be praying for them, you know, for their need. And so that, you know, that always makes me feel so good inside.
A lot of strength in that thing.
Yes, you know, because, you know, some of them are just so heartbroken or desperate, and just knowing that there's someone out there that they didn't even think about would be praying for them, that is praying for them, you know, gives them a little bit of more strength and, you know, hope that, you know, everything's going to be okay. You know, just trust in the Lord, and he'll, you know, so, you know, that I'm, you know, the assurance or the confidence that the Lord is always with you, you know, if you just have trust and complete trust and faith, you know, sometimes, you know, he'll do what you need of him, if, you know, if he knows that it's for your well-being, or, you know, if it is his will, you know, so. And I have another instance where, you know, and I know I've told you this, you and Leah, before, something that happened with my children, where they were, you know, the two oldest ones were fighting back and forth. And you know, one said, you know, when I got home, they were really going at it, and I'm going to tell Dad, kind of thing. And I was just praying, no, you know, your dad, you know, it was something that was going on between them. One of them said something, you know, about Dad, or something about their dad or something. And, you know, I was like, if he tells him, you know, what the other said, you know, they're really going to be in trouble, you know. And I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want him to know such a thing. And I didn't want them to be in trouble at the same time. I didn't want that kind of, you know, trouble in our family. And so I had to go and take my sister-in-law home, which she just lives about 5 minutes, but all the way there, all the way back, I prayed, Lord, please help me with this. You know, I prayed in Spanish, I prayed in English, I just prayed, you know, please help me with this. And by the time I got home, I was so distraught about this situation that my oldest son, who said was going to tell, you know, his dad, he comes and meets me at the car, and he saw me crying, and he's like, Mama, he says, don't worry about it. You know, I'm not going to say anything. You know, you just need to talk to, you know, you just need to talk to your daughter, you know. and he hugged me, and he said, don't worry about it. I'm you know, I'm not going to say anything, but, you know, and I just the relief I felt, you know, because I felt like the Lord had answered my prayer, that, you know, that situation was avoided. And I did talk to her, and we, you know, but
Irma, we just went over our time, so, but thank you so much.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I didn't want to cut you off, but I think we you know, got the gist of course, you explained that to us when it was actually happening a day or two later, and we know your capacity for prayer and your belief. You've been with the Lord since you were 15 years old, searching him out, and you drag Paul along with it. We appreciate it very much. Well, anyway, we got to go. It was great talking, and I'll see some of you in a little while at meeting, and look forward to picking this up next week.
Okay.
So,
All right.
all right.
Thank you, Roger.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
I never heard you go so long.